Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. This is the die that we are going to be working with. This is from AlinaCutle off Aliexpress, and I knew as soon as I saw this die from her new release that this was going to be one of the first ones that I had to make a card with. So I have die cut it with just plain black cardstock, but we are going to do some bits and pieces to this just to make it a little bit more fun. So I'm going to start off kind of just with the snowflake, start off gently, and I am just using some Inca Gold, and this is in the silver color, to color the snowflakes. All I'm doing is just adding a little bit of post-it note tape or low-tack tape to kind of mask them off because I don't want to get the string that they're hanging down on, just the absolute snowflake. Then I'm going to move on to the Art Alchemy. This is the gold one, so it's very similar to the Inca Gold, but just a different kind, and I happen to have this one in the gold. So I'm just using gold and silvers to colour in all of those little stars and snowflakes up the top there. I'm also going to colour in the two tiny little stars that are on top of the Christmas tree. And now that that part is done and dusted, it dries super quick, so I don't really need to worry about that. And now I'm just going to take a piece of paper, a scrap piece of paper, and pop it behind the buildings and trace around the outside of the buildings. Just pretty roughly, because I will need to be cutting inside of these lines so that you obviously can't see it around the sides. But I'm just going to colour this all in with a yellow pen. This one happens to be a Noir tricolor alcohol marker, but any yellow pen would work just fine. I'm using yellow because that kind of, to me, reminds me of the lights that light up in the buildings at night time, if the buildings have their lights on. So I am just cutting these out individually. You probably could do it with all four of them joined together, but I just felt like this was the easiest way for me. So you can see I'm just very, very roughly cutting out the shape. No one is going to see this part, so it most certainly doesn't have to be perfect. So yeah, I am just making sure that it fits behind the building with nothing sticking out the sides, adding a little bit of liquid glue. This glue bottle is from Aliexpress as well. It comes empty, obviously, and I fill it with the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and I do that using a syringe. And it is really important when you're doing a project like this where you're just using tiny little amounts of glue that it's going to be a really nice strong glue, because you certainly don't want anything to happen or to come apart when the recipient receives their card. So I also have taken another piece of scrap cardstock and I have traced around the Christmas trees. Now I am choosing 4 colours of markers. Now this looks terrible from what you can see here, so it is not meant to look pretty, but I promise once it goes behind the tree, it's just meant to look like the Christmas lights all over the tree. So it looks fine once it's behind there, and I'm also going to add some glitter pen, and that way it will sparkle a little bit as well. And I'm just going to do exactly the same thing to both trees. So I'll use a little bit of that glue, dot it behind, and then add those multicolored pieces of cardstock, which look terrible like that, but once we turn it around, it starts to look okay, I promise. So we've pretty much covered up all the buildings and the trees, and we've got everything colored on the front there. So now we're going to work on the background. Now I have these 4 Distress Oxides here. My lightest one is Tumbled Glass, then the mid one is Blueprint Sketch, and then I've got Chip Sapphire now, and I will add a little bit of black soot just to kind of darken things up a little bit, because I'm in my head this is like a nighttime, a night sky, I guess. So yeah, it doesn't matter that it's not perfect blending because lots of it will be covered up. And it also, this panel is a Distress Watercolor cardstock panel, so I won't need to use the whole thing. I'll need to cut it down a little bit to fit this die. Now I am going to use some of the Nuvo, I think it's called Diamond Glitter, but what I want in the background is for not all of the glitter to fall. So I'm using tiny, tiny, tiny little dots of glue, and I have just put the glitter on top, and I'm going to dry these so that these will always be in the night sky, and they're kind of meant to represent sort of stars and things as well. Now I have chosen where I want to put my panel, and so all I'm going to do is very roughly take some scissors to it and cut it down to where I need to be. You can make this much more exact with a paper trimmer, but honestly I didn't need to. This is the adhesive from Alina as well. She has some brilliant adhesives. The foam adhesive and this double-sided tape are some of my absolute favorites. Now this is so skinny here. It fits behind the border of this frame perfectly, which is exactly what I need. I have added a little bit of her thicker adhesives to the back of the houses, and then a couple of little ones to the back of a couple of the snowflakes, which I was able to have enough room to put the adhesive on. Then I have added some of Alina's acetate sheet to the back, and then the next part is where the fun begins. Now this is Alina's very thin foam tape, which I love. This is my favorite at the moment, and I have run out so many times of this. But this is great because this foam tape, even though it is super skinny, it is able to be cut in half without any trouble. It doesn't gunk up your scissors and things, although I am working with a non-stick pair of scissors, but it is really, really good, strong foam tape. This is the really nice and skinny one, and I have cut it in half. A little quick tip here. When you are going around corners with foam tape, make sure you take off both sides of the release paper, and it will go around any circle shape or any corners easily. You won't have any problems. If you leave the release paper on, you will run into problems, and it won't kind of curve nicely. But yeah, and then I used a little bit of her thicker foam tape to go behind the houses, and because I wanted the glitter to fall between the houses, so it kind of looked like snow banking up in between the houses. That's what I was picturing in my head anyway. And then I have attached the night sky panel to the back of it all and putting it onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. Thank you so much for watching. This is one of my most favorite cards recently. I love this card and it's so fun to play with. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of this video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!